The tallgrass prairie is one of the most endangered ecosystems in the world, and in North Dakota there is less than 3% remaining. Most of the tallgrass prairie in North Dakota is invaded by the noxious species leafy spurge, which reduces plant diversity, is poisonous to cattle, and has immense seed production. Because of this, restoring these areas into diverse native grasslands can be challenging. Even if above-ground plants are suppressed, leafy spurge is likely to re-emerge from its persistent seed bank. So, what can we do? First, we can apply an herbicide to initially suppress leafy spurge before we seed. But there are a plethora of herbicides on the market today, all with differing modes of actions, so it's important to understand which ones work well and which don't. Secondly, we can design a seed mix that mimics succession to limit the reemergence of leafy spurge. Standard prairie reconstruction seed mixes often omit early successional species because they disappear from the restoration in the long term. However, these species may play a vital role in community assembly by germinating quickly, obtaining biomass, and creating essentially a protective barrier against undesirable species that could colonize the bare ground. To test this theory, we conducted a 6-hectare prairie reconstruction. We applied 5 different herbicides to areas of 0.4 hectares apiece. Then each herbicide plot was split in half, and we randomly assigned which side received the standard seed mix and which side received the standard seed mix with the additional high density of early successional species. And since that's a mouthful, we called that the spike seed mix. We also left an area untouched and unrestored as a reference site. We then took data on this by surveying the plant communities for 2 years. So, what do we find? Well, I'll preface these results by saying that all herbicides were equally effective at controlling leafy spurge, and so I'll only present the effects of the seed mixes here. We found that the addition of early successional species to a standard seed mix did not reduce leafy spurge, and we can see this on the left graph here. On the x-axis, we have the 2 years of the study, 2024 and 2025. On the y-axis, we have the relative cover of leafy spurge. The 3 bars indicate the 3 treatments. The gray is the unrestored reference site, the tan is the restored with the standard seed mix, and the green is the restored with the spike seed mix. The different letters above the treatments indicate significant differences. We see that both seed mixes reduce the relative cover of leafy spurge compared to the unrestored reference site in both years. However, there is no significant differences in leafy spurge between the 2 seed mixes. And that's pretty curious because we did see a successful establishment of those early successional species. Here on the right graph, we can see the spike seed mix having an increased seeded species relative cover. In this graph, we have the same x-axis, the same treatments, but now the y-axis is the relative cover of seeded species. We see that the seeded species just about doubled with the addition of early successional species in both years. However, notice that relative cover in the spike mix is less than 30%. Possibly, one reason we didn't see a reduction of the leafy spurge may be that 30% isn't high enough to create that ground cover, the protective barrier needed for density-dependent suppression of leafy spurge. With only 30% relative cover, this means there is some variability in the establishment of the early succession species within each treatment. And we saw this in the field. In some cases, the early successional species established well, say on the left with the beautiful flowers. And in the other cases, within the same plot, the early successional species did not establish well. See on the right, a plot filled with weeds. Increasing the seeding rate of specifically the early successional species could increase ground cover and therefore reduce leafy spurge. In fact, a study using the same seeding technique as ours reduced the establishment of the invasive Canada thistle. But their early successional species were seeded at 5 times the rate of ours. Another explanation could be that leafy spurge just hasn't emerged from the seed bank yet. In both cases, the relative cover of leafy spurge were pretty low. And with time, you might be able to see a difference between the 2 seed mixes. For now though, we found that all herbicides in the study worked well as reconstruction pre-treatments to reduce leafy spurge, and that the addition of early successional species to a standard seed mix did not reduce leafy spurge. With that, I'd like to thank you all for listening to my research, and a special thanks to the DeKaiser Lab for all the amazing help that they've provided me over the years. Thanks.